Beverly Hills Cop comes out, and it was the #1 movie for 14 weeks.
It doesn't exist anymore.
You know, this is very embarrassing. You know, part of me rather get locked up than get put in this little Fisher-Price-looking squad car. Y'all are the Lego cops.
What brings you back to 90210?
You're in a snowplow?
Yeah, we in a damn snowplow. What's the problem? A lot of blind spots in the snowplow.
Well, Eddie Murphy is back, and he's back as Axel Foley, and they're even bringing back the Crazy Frog tune. So I am all for it. The nostalgia is real, and I am a big Eddie Murphy fan. So I'm really, enjoying the full revival, the renaissance of Eddie Murphy, as it were. And Beverly Hills Cop, Axel Foley, did drop on Netflix this week. And he's back solving crimes only as he can. John, you got to go see this movie, and by that I mean you just turned on your TV and popped on Netflix.
Yeah.
So, Engineer, you have muted yourself again, but there you go.
I know. No. I know. I keep talking shit, and karmically, I am still muted.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God damn it. No. So I was like, he didn't have to go anywhere. You just turned on Netflix. I turned this movie on with a friend, and then I turned it off, and we watched something else. That's what happened.
Yeah, because you have no taste in movies. Anyway, so when I watched this film with my parents, who are just as who introduced me to the Beverly Hills Cop franchise.
Naturally, you said you're watching it with your parents, and that does not support your case. I'm so sorry.
Okay, what? You don't love your
my
parents?
mom loves Lifetime movies. Like my mom.
So does my mom, but that's like a mom thing.
Point.
Whatever.
That's like. Your parents
Whatever.
are not. I'm not exactly sure that they're going to be like the movie buffs of the century.
My dad.
I don't know how we got into this conversation.
But anyway,
let's talk about the movie itself.
Anyway, this was
John.
fucking great. Like, I'm the only one here who can actually judge the damn movie because I actually sat and watched it all the way fucking through, and not just the first 5 minutes.
The script is so bad. The script is so bad that after the first action sequence, after the snowplow, fake laugh, you're kind of like, okay. So, I could watch something else right now. It is just so, does it pick up after the first 10, 15 minutes? Does it get better?
It gets better. Yeah, this was a fun time.
I used to love Joseph Gordon-Levitt, too, when I was younger. I feel like I will try to watch this movie again, because I do love Eddie Murphy. To be fair, I am not the person who was like, ew, what is this? We're turning it off. I was just kind of watching it.
I mean, the thing is, you didn't
gauging that the situation is not great. Yeah.
You're not really aware of the franchise that much. And from what I've noticed that the people, because when I was reviewing this a couple days ago with with some friends of mine, the 3 people, which were me and 2 of my other friends, who grew up with the franchise, ended up absolutely loving it. And while the other guys who were aware of it but didn't love it, they were like, yeah, it was a good time, nothing great. Well, meanwhile, us 3 were like, oh my God, this was so much fun. Seeing Eddie Murphy back as Axel was so great. His interactions with all the older characters, Taggart played by John Ashton, Rosewood played by Judge Reinhold, and then you also had Bronson Pinchot as Sergey, and then who else was there? And then I think and then you had Paul Reiser as Jeffrey. They were all they all slipped back into their roles like a glove, a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, but this still felt like it still felt like a Beverly Hills Cop movie. Yeah, it's been 30 years since the last movie. Exactly 30 years on the dot.
Because the first one came out in 1984.
Yeah, and then 40 years since the first one. So this has been in development hell for a while. This has been in development hell for at least 20 years, I think. Because I know
feel like this movie was a good addition? You feel like it picked right back up in the perfect way that it should have? Do you really feel like this added to the storyline? Because I feel like so many of these movies, unfortunately, don't. You know what I mean? Oh, it's so nice to see these characters again, but it's okay.
They do make sure to give him new challenges. It's what they do is like it kind of reminds me of sort of a Top Gun Maverick. It's not nearly as good as Top Gun Maverick, but it like kind of has that vibe of like holding on and respecting the roots of the franchise, but doing some newer things. Like now he, what they do, they give him a kid, and that he has like a estranged and not great relationship with his kid, who's played by, I believe, Taylor Page is her name. She was okay. She was fine. Like she was a little annoying at points, but I feel like she like kind of had the right to be, because he's not a good dad. So they do give him that like sort of like butting head sort of thing, and they do have like a good chemistry in that case. Kevin Bacon, the man just plays sleazy douche. It's just fucking perfectly, both in this and Maxine. I joked that Kevin Bacon was in two movies that are 1980s throwbacks that are sequels to other films that take place in LA. So, it very, and they come out the same week. And I'm like, that's interesting. But
there's enough overlap there that qualifies.
Yeah, I think I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, I think all of them, I mean, it's just so funny to see this picture. Like John Ashton looks terrible and Judge Reinhold looks older, and then meanwhile Eddie Murphy looks exactly the same. Fucking
dude,
Black Don't Crack,
if you watch the first Beverly Hills Cop movie, he does look older, but not by much.
He looks like, I mean, his face has gotten like a little bigger, but like outside of that, like comparatively, like it's like Winston, what's his name? Ernie Hudson. Like all the other Ghostbusters look fucking decrepit, yet like Ernie Hudson has like aged like fine wine. Like all the like fucking Bill Murray looks like the Crypt Keeper. Meanwhile, fucking Ernie Hudson's a goddamn dilf. So like, or a gilf in this case, but it's just like Black Don't Crack, man. I'm just saying, and I just love, like, I felt that the comedy was really funny. I felt that it kept into the roots, doing some modern stuff, and it just did it. I said this during my other review, and a lot of others agreed with me. To me, as a fan of this franchise, it was very satisfying, and it felt like a big, comforting hug from an old friend. That's what it felt like. It's not like a perfect movie, but to, I think, fans of the franchise, it will be like a perfect movie. It just like, it hits all of those points. It hits all of those right beats, and it just feels very satisfying to watch. And Eddie Murphy just like, I know he does a lot of bad movies, but when he fucking does a great movie, he fucking hits. Like
that's actually one of the critic reviews that I read too. It was like one of the critic reviews. The critic reviews on this movie are not very high, so I'll be honest about that. But it just says essentially, it's very obvious that Eddie Murphy has that twinkle back in his eye, and I think for a long time he didn't. Like he was one of those actors that was working, but he lost something in I would say probably from basically from Norbit on till recently. I feel like he was kind of.
I feel like Dolomite Is My Name was like showed like, oh yeah, Eddie Murphy, he can still act. Like that. Dolomite Is My Name was really good. That was
I feel like he kind of he checked out for a little bit, but people are saying like he's back, and so a lot of the critic reviews sort of mirror what you're saying. Like Eddie Murphy carries the movie, but a lot of people are just shitting on the movie. It's like, come for Eddie Murphy, stay for Eddie Murphy, and basically nothing else. Like it.
I wouldn't say totally, but again, that's just, I'm probably biased because I love this franchise so much.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, like, obviously newer people can give it a chance, but I mean, don't expect to like love this movie. If you're a fan of this franchise and like grew up with it and watched it as a kid, I would say you would pretty much really love this movie. If you're not, I would say maybe try to go back and watch the other movies because they're a lot of fun, and then maybe try to watch this one. But I just, again,
but I think that's also something to say is I think it's really challenging to make a remake. Right now the 90s are in, right? But like to make a remake from a movie that was a hit in the 80s or to add to that storyline, it is so hard to hit the same sort of formulaic beats as the 80s movies because it was such a specific kind of movie. Like, you had St. Elmo's Fire, you had this, I mean, there was like a very specific formula for 1980s movies that just doesn't really work today. And so in order to pay homage to that and bring it into the modern day, like, I feel like there's sort of it's kind of difficult to do that. Like, even Roadhouse didn't really hit the same way the 80s Roadhouse did, right? Like, it's just not, they had to completely remake the movie. They had to like completely bring it into a new storyline, and it still felt a little too forced because what went on in the 80s doesn't necessarily work in like PC modern day, you know? So they have a lot of challenges bringing back movies from the 80s, I think, in a lot of different ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I think a lot of it comes down to just how you go about the movie, like, and what your approach is to the franchise, how you balance, you know, the nostalgia with telling a good story. This movie definitely leans a little heavy on the nostalgia. John, what were your favorite parts of the nostalgia elements? I think they brought back basically the whole soundtrack from the original movie.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
which of those songs did you really enjoy listening to again?
I gotta say, Pointer Sisters was pretty good. Like during the snowplow chase scene, that was pretty good. But like hearing Axel F, I will say I loved hearing that theme again. I didn't really like the Lil Nas X
Crazy
remix.
Frog?
That was pretty bad. But like I'm not really a big rap guy, so I mean Lil Nas X, he's living his best life. Good for him. But I just don't. Like, just leave it as is. It was good as is. You don't need to try to remix it for like adding shit in there that didn't matter.
What about this nod to Happy Gilmore?
Yeah, that was so funny because I remember watching the trailer and seeing him there, and then I forgot about it. And then when that scene showed up, I'm like, hey, it's Shooter McGavin. Holy shit. Which is even funnier considering that Happy Gilmore 2 is happening, I think, right? That they greenlit that, they confirmed that.
Oh,
so,
yeah, no,
like seeing him,
it's also happening on Netflix, and of course, Adam Sandler's got a big deal with Netflix for that.
So, is the Beverly Hills Cop universe in the Happy Gilmore universe now, or is this the crossover we need?
I don't know. I mean, is
or
it
the
like
crossover we didn't know that we needed?
Yeah. But yeah, it's and I like Christopher McDonald. He just has, again, speaking of guys who are really good at playing sleazy douchebags, Christopher McDonald. He just plays a great villain.
He does. He absolutely does. I mean, and look, when we were talking about the movie's critic score, yes, it is struggling a little bit in that department because it's better than Despicable Me, which is, you know,
that's not saying much.
Saying something.
It's a low standard, but at the same time,
kind of, you know, saying 65, something. Yeah,
65% is a good number. You know, that what that essentially means is 65% of the critics out of the 150, let's say here, that reviewed it gave it a positive review. And even though a lot of the positive reviews are sort of middling, they do tell you that, hey, like John, you mentioned, if you're a fan of the franchise, you will enjoy this movie because it will give you everything you're looking for. Like, I think the best way you put it is like, it feels like a hug from an old friend. And sometimes that's all we want. I mean, that's what my experience was when I was watching Top Gun Maverick. So like that's if you're a fan of Beverly Hills Cop, like I am a fan of Top Gun, then this is the movie for you. And with an 80% audience score, you could tell it's doing really well. For a movie that's on Netflix, I do wonder though, John, I asked you this question last week. So to kind of wrap this this whole review up, I want to ask you if you had the choice to put this movie out on streaming, having seen it now, or putting it out in a movie theater, which outlet would you choose?
I would say put it in a theater. I think this would have made a good amount of money. Maybe not like a ton, seeing the budget was like 150 million. So I don't know totally about that. But like, again, I'm biased. I'm a fan. I would say put the shit in theaters, my guy. Absolutely. I know they would never, but that's just me. I would love to see this like on a big screen, especially the snowplow and the helicopter action chase scenes. Those would have been awesome to see in a theater, like most definitely. So
yeah, and they shot a good chunk of that practically too. So like you can really see the scale in a way that feels very tangible. Like there's some CGI elements, I'm sure, but they had a real chopper on set. They were shooting that for real. You could see this. It just feels better when it's done practically because it feels more real. So yeah, with that said, guys, I mean, hey, it's a movie that's out there on Netflix. If you guys are interested, give it a watch. If you have already seen it, did you like it? Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the live chat. We love that we have Ron in the chat. We've got Fiona in the chat. We have got Horimobi. He's been watching the whole time. Really glad to have you guys out here. I know there's more of you guys watching who are not commenting, but you're welcome to let us know what you think about Axel Foley in the comments, in the live chat. Hit the like button. That really helps us out with the channel as always. And subscribe if you're looking for more movie related news, because we're doing this each and every week.